you can actively design the narratives that serve you, the narratives, the belief systems that serve you. You have a choice. You can choose in what to believe, and you can actively shape that in a way. And you can always ask yourself, what is the intention behind this narrative? What does it serve? Why am I having this story in my mind that tells me that I need to be a certain way, that I need to act in a certain way, that I need to follow a certain life path? Welcome to today's Stream of Consciousness episode. Today, on the topic of the power of narratives, how the stories we tell us shape our reality. I wanted to record this podcast episode because I wanted to share with you how important it is which words we choose, which stories we tell ourselves and one another. Because I see that not only on an individual level, but also on a collective and societal level, this is what's happening every day in our lives. And we can either approach it in a conscious way or in an unconscious way. And I see the massive benefits that come from approaching this in a conscious way and seeing how you can shape your own reality in a beautiful way that supports you and the people around you. So let's get started. All right. As in all the other episodes of the Stream of Consciousness format, I also here didn't prepare a script because my intention is to share with you from the most authentic place what's alive for me in relationship to this topic of the power of narratives. So narratives are everywhere in our day-to-day life. If you look at the news, if you look at what politicians say, if you look at how you were raised, the education system, everywhere. Its narratives are the glue that keeps us together. Narratives have the power to unite massive amounts of people for one cause, which can be used in a way with an intention that is beautiful and supportive, collaborative and nourishing, or that is actually harmful and destructive. So doing that in a conscious way and even being aware of the narratives that we are being told from our outside world can have a massive impact on your life. So if you want, you could actually now go inside yourself, write down, maybe journal a little bit about which kind of narratives are present for you. It can be narratives that other people have told you, narratives that are just present within you without even knowing the source, the origin of this narrative, or narratives that you're seeing that are being broadcasted, for example, on the news. And you can always ask yourself, what is the intention behind this narrative? What does it serve? So this is actually one of the most essential questions that I love to ask myself. Does it serve? And what does it serve? And then you can start creating your own narratives. So one step is just like observing and analyzing. There are these narratives outside in the world within you, and just seeing them for what they are. And then you can go a little bit deeper and you can research the origin, like where does this come from? Why am I having this story in my mind that tells me that I need to be a certain way, that I need to act in a certain way, that I need to follow a certain life path? They come from somewhere. And you can just like invite a lot of curiosity and go on this search and try to find out, where does this actually come from? So this is something exciting to do. And as a third step, you can actively design the narratives that serve you. The narratives, the belief systems that serve you. You have a choice. You can choose in what to believe, and you can actively shape that in a way. So, for example, if you were running around with the narrative and the belief that I'm not good enough, that can be a present story. And you could just, as in step one, observe, it's that one's actually there. Okay, all right. For this moment, I'm just going to accept it the way it is. Doesn't mean that I like it, but I'm going to accept it that it's there currently, if that is true in your example. And then step two, if you want, you could go a little bit deeper and dive into where does this actually come from? Where did I hear this narrative first? And which environments shaped this narrative? Without starting the blame game of blaming others and making them responsible for your experience, but just saying, aha, interesting, that's where it might come from. And with this step, or as always, when going down and digging in the past, I want to say that there's a fine line to that from my personal perspective, and it's something to be done with care, because I see the danger sometimes when digging too much in the past, that this you could dig endlessly, right? There's always something more to discover. And if this gets a quality of, oh yeah, my life sucks, I had such a bad childhood and everything is just like so heavy, and it stops serving you. And if something doesn't serve you, don't do it. That's my personal opinion. Sometimes there are certain things that we need to cross through and overcome, and this experience of process might be uncomfortable. And still, you can be connected to that something is serving you. And if something is just uncomfortable and it's not serving you, and you're just like digging in the past, then maybe the time has come to leave this hole and stop digging and moving on to another step, which is shaping your reality in the here and now. And that's what I like to focus most of the energy on. So, if we speak about narratives and stories that you're running around with, you could ask yourself, which story would support me more? Instead of I'm not good enough, maybe it's I'm good enough. Or maybe it's I'm allowed to explore and learn. I'm allowed to fail. I'm allowed to grow. I'm allowed to play around. And see if these narratives serve you more. Maybe there's another narrative, that a narrative of competition, a narrative of separation, which I see as such a huge narrative in our society. This narrative of we are separated. And there are several larger separations that happens, like that humans are disconnected and separated from nature, that our mind is separated from our body and the rest of our being. And there's a separation of genders as well. For many years that said some are better than others. And all these separations are part of this narrative of we're just disconnected from one another. And what I believe, what would support all of us way more, is believing in we are interconnected. There's some kind of connection between all of us, humans, beings, nature, the planet. We're all connected with one another. And once we understand that, not just cognitively, but with our entire being, then this will also allow us to act in completely different ways. We could not be destroying nature and the environment if we would believe that actually we're connected. It would feel like chopping off one of our arms if we chop down the rainforest, for example. So these are narratives which are all present. And maybe you find other narratives in the news, in the media, that also have a certain function. And when you understand that this function is often, I don't say always, but often about controlling something, what is it controlling? What does this medium want to tell you? Which kind of world does it want to create in your perception? And what is the intention of that? How should you behave then? Super fascinating. And how can you change other or your narratives in a way that support you more? For example, I like to think of every moment in my life as an opportunity to shape the culture, how I interact with myself and others. Every time I meet someone else, I can choose what is my culture in greeting other people. And I could follow the path that many others have followed and say like, this is the way we greet. I always give a like following this path of greeting another person is giving a handshake, talking about the weather, asking some other superficial questions, and then saying goodbye. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just like one way of doing it. Or what is your culture? Which kind of culture do you want to establish? Do you have a narrative that you want to be close with other people? Is there a story that you want to practice connection and kindness and compassion? And if you choose this narrative, how would that express itself in your day to day life? So, narratives are very, very powerful. And this also applies to narratives, for example, about your relationship. Which kind of stories and beliefs do you hold there? Is there a narrative that one person is the person who brings home the money and the other person is the person who takes care of the house, for example? You can choose this narrative. I'm not saying that it's wrong. I'm just saying make a conscious choice. How would that affect how you accompany your children through life? Which kind of narratives do you have about the role of a father, a mother? Which kind of narratives do you have around like respect and appreciation? Which narratives do you have about what is what does learning look like? So it's like an endless topic, you see. I'm getting excited about this because it has so much potential that you can shape the life in a way that you want to shape your life. And maybe I'm going to conclude at this point. I want to conclude at this point that you can shape your life. You can become aware of the narratives that you have. You can shape them and decide the culture that you want to live with yourself and with others. So, what is the narrative that you choose? Looking forward to connecting with you in the next episode of Essence.